Higginbotham.
Here.
Mr. Pollock.
Here.
Mr. Brown, myself, I'm here. Item number 3, agenda revisions and approval.
Move to approve the agenda.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Item number 4, approval of minutes from January 20th, 2025.
Make
So-
a motion to approve the January 20th, 2025 meeting minutes.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Higginbotham, a second from Mr. Pollock. Any discussion? Hearing none. Let's take a vote on that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries. And that brings us to reports and updates. And we'll turn that over to Mr. Nowak. There's the first one, item 5A, teacher contracts.
Sure, we have one, a limited term contract to bring forward. We are recommending Ryan Breitwitz as a limited term social studies teacher at Germantown High School. This is 49 days, an amount of $10,290.
Okay, there's not a recommendation on that. Any questions? Nope. All right, we'll move on to item B, staffing update.
Thank you. Our staffing update looks fairly similar to what it has in recent months. On the teaching side, we have no vacancies aside from what we can project for next year, which we'll see in our staffing plan. I did include the Director of Human Resources position as a vacancy at the moment. And then below that, you'll see a variety of support staff positions that are listed, from custodian positions to aide positions to some food service positions that have been filled. We still have a number of vacancies remaining, 2 special ed aides, maintenance position, and a reading aide position.
Okay. Any questions, any discussion? All right, we will move down to item C, support staff compensation study update.
Dr. Reuter, myself, and Mr. Altendorf have begun the process of trying to formulate modifications to our current support staff compensation and benefits model, if you will. Our initial, without kind of getting too deep into it, we have some initial impressions that we feel good about relative to looking at longevity. We'll continue to look at some of the other areas, some of the other themes that emerged, like time off practices, like unique certifications and those kinds of things. Our intent is to come to the board in the month of April with a proposed model that will give us time if we want to make modifications from there, so that we're prepared to begin July 1 with the new model.
Great, thank you. Thank you for everybody's hard work on that, that's putting in the hours. Any questions on the study? All right, that takes us to item 6, unfinished business, of which there is none. And then item 7 is the preliminary 2025-2026 teacher staffing plan. Mike?
Yeah, this is probably our biggest item for this particular committee meeting. The preliminary teacher staffing plan is done at this time of the year, as I've said, because it precedes contracts and any types of layoff that occur. It also coincides with retirements and those kinds of things as we think about staffing. The staffing plan itself, though, is really a reflection of what our needs are relative to enrollment, relative to class sizes, relative especially at the high school level and middle school level, what kinds of things kids are signing up for, what they're interested in taking. That's a process that involves us meeting at each of those levels. At the high school level in particular, meeting multiple times with counselors, like a counselor and administration around what kids are selecting, what our staff numbers look like from a departmental lens. So in other words, if we have a department that is requiring 10.2 FTE or 10.4 FTE, and the enrollment is there for course selections, how are we going to handle, for example, the 0.4? Will we do it through a part-time teacher? Will we do it through departmental overloads? Some of that we work through with teachers. Tech Ed is an example of that. They often have needs for a little bit more than their number of teachers allows. So we'll work with them on how to navigate that, how to make that work. Because finding a 0.4 Tech Ed teacher is next to impossible. So sometimes that involves sequencing of courses, offering things on an every other year basis in a manner where kids can take them in a logical way for those kids that are interested, for example, in technical careers and that type of thing. So what you see is where we feel we are right now. Those of you that have been on the board for even a year, some of you much longer than that though, know that this changes as we get into summer, in particular often at the elementary level as class sizes increase. We would come to you with requests for more FTE in certain areas. So that's why it's important for us to call this preliminary at this time. As you look at the information that's provided, the kind of the highlights, if you will, at the elementary level is where we see the most significant change, if you will, from this year looking into next. In particular, there are 2 less teaching sections at the elementary level. In the 1-5 range, there are 2 less special ed teachers needed at that level, and that's based, and Katie was here, she would explain, based on student need, caseload, those kinds of things. That's her recommendation at this time. There's an additional 1.5 reduction in FTE that's associated to 4K and 5K. That is a place, as I said, and you've experienced that we could see growth. That 1.5 could be changed. If anything would change, it would likely be that. So that's something we see. At the middle school level and at the high school level, we see, I don't want to say status quo, but we see stability in terms of the number of teachers that we have in the core areas and in the elective areas. At the high school level, those nuances are, especially in the elective areas, as I said, are handled through overload. So that's what we would look at. Overall, as I said, there's a reduction in FTE, as you can see. I think it was in the 5.9 range. As I said, that's that 5.5, but then some slight reduction in the need at the elective areas at the elementary level because of those 2 tracks not running. So that's where we are right now. No, Dr. Reuter, anything from your end?
Yeah, I would just point out 2 or 3 key areas, the 4K and 5K fluctuation. That's been common, that we go down as newer parents to the district haven't registered their child for either 4-year-old kindergarten or 5-year-old kindergarten. We do see an influx specifically at MacArthur when it comes to kindergarten in the summer months, as well as we see an influx across the district with 4K. So I would assume that we'll come back to you with that reduction of 1.5 and 2.0 FTE at 4K and 5K. We'll probably either level up to current numbers or at least level up to some degree and add sections. And then if you look down at the bottom of the staffing plan on the first page, you'll see a 1.2 increase for school psychologists. We've budgeted, given that there's a reduction in other areas of pupil service, to increase our current 3.8 FTE to a full 4.8 to a 6.0. That would mean that every school would have their own full-time school psychologist. And that's been a goal of ours for the last 3 years, to build financial stability, to provide that pupil service support at that level for behavior intervention, as well as special education oversight to help our principals, so that every school would have a full-time psychologist. I think when I first got here, we had 3.5 for 6 buildings, which when you're traveling, then that's spread very thin, given that all of our schools have different start and end times. So this will solidify a new hire and increase one of our current employees that's at 80% to 100%. So every school will have their own school psychologist.
And that school psychologist will go through the training that Katie was talking
Correct.
about previously, so good coverage on that. Mike, you've taken a lot of time this past week and shared a lot of the behind-the-scenes working of getting these schedules and everything together, and it was very impressive, because there's a lot of information coming in these last couple of weeks that all of a sudden come due, that'll plug into software programs and such to come up with scheduling, so it's really interesting to see, and a lot of work.
The follow-up to this, you'll see the staffing forecast that's provided. This isn't new information for you at this point. There are 12 retirements listed and 1 resignation. Those numbers will change as we move forward. But the coming together of this plan and contracts is really why we do this. Doing this right now potentially allows us to get out in front of the game relative to posting positions. If we know that and get approval on this preliminary staffing plan, and we know that the retirements have been approved by the board and the resignations have been approved, we can say with certainty that these positions will be open, and with your blessing will give us the ability to post sooner.
Or any inter-district transfers as well.
That too, yeah. That will give us a leg up on having those discussions, looking at teacher interests and in that
Yeah,
regard.
licensure and all of that. Yep.
Yeah. So really.
And again, this is our biggest budget item, so this is extremely important. And to Mike's point, we're ahead of schedule than we've been in the past. So then now we have understanding of, based on enrollment and contracts, what we have to navigate for budget planning purposes for next year.
Very good.
This time always is busy, and you can look at the next 4 to 8 weeks and think, oh, we've got time, we've got plenty of time. But when you throw in spring break and Easter break, it just goes very quick. So the ability to get out in front of it really is helpful from my experiences, and you've seen it in your time with the board too.
We have a study out right now about growth in the district, possible future growth. Anything from that report, would that affect 25-26 school year, or is that further out?
That would be further out.
I just want to look for anything that may come out of the blue and blindside us and go, what?
Well, we'll see what happens at a couple village meetings over the next couple weeks, but we don't foresee all of a sudden 150,
Yeah.
200 kids moving in before September 1 next year, but you never know, right?
Very good. Any questions? None? All right, Mike, that brings us to the spring coaching contracts. And,
I think we
We gotta
need
make a motion.
oh, I'm
motion.
sorry. Yep, you're right, we even need a motion on that. Take a motion?
Make a motion with a positive recommendation to the full board to approve the proposed staffing plan for the 25-26 school year and to issue 276 regular full-time teaching contracts and up to 10 part-time teaching contracts.
Second.
Okay. Motion second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Oh, sorry, did you not? Go ahead.
Something, yeah, I was just waiting for the discussion portion of it. So with the volume of retirements that we're seeing, and it's fantastic, we have staff reaching that point in their career. And this proposal I'm seeing, it looked like it balances out to what the district needs are. I hear, and I don't know if the rest of the board does, but I hear community questions along the lines of, well, our staff is overworked, they're overtasked with class, size, classes that they teach, or that overload scenario that occurs. And what I'm seeing here is we have a significant volume out via retirement, and there's no plan to replace them because that's the right size of the staff, is your
No,
recommendation?
Well, there's far more outgoing than the staffing plan demonstrates reduction, if you will. It's a fraction. The work,
I guess I'm asking that because I think there's a misconception there.
yeah,
That if we have X amount of retirements and we are not replacing any of them, that's actually not a true statement.
that's not a true statement.
Okay.
Additionally, class size fall within district policy.
Yeah, that I'm also aware of. But this is the conversations we hear in public, and it's interesting when we're as transparent as we are with the numbers on a monthly basis, with personnel meeting or bi-monthly, depending on when it happens, of incoming, outgoing staff, and this conversation right here where I'm seeing these enrollment numbers, right, compared to the staffing and the conversation we all just had, I think that's really not the case.
Right.
That this is the appropriate staff size, along with the investment and strategic plan over 3 years to ensure an increase in counselors, along with the training for it. I see where this all kind of comes together, and there's a lot of misnomers in the public sometimes over what somebody's opinion on what appropriate staffing level or class size is and what the professionals are recommending to us as the board.
Yeah, I would say, echo, this process is driven by class enrollment, class size, which has been discussed separately from this, and we hold very true to that process. I would also point out that with the retirements that we see and the resignations, coupled with the few reductions that we noted, we don't see any need to engage in non-renewal for mere purposes of layoff. So in other words, enrollment-based staff reduction does not seem to occur won't occur based on what we're seeing here.
And then given Jake wasn't feeling well, kind of wish he would have stuck around for this to answer himself, but I'm assuming he was involved in this conversation to a great extent as to what his teaching and learning staff needs.
Correct. Yeah. So, actually, at all three levels, Jake and I collaborated quite a bit, including trips to the high school to talk about exactly that. The way and the connection between the two of us is Jake really from the classroom side in terms of the coursework itself and those kinds of needs. Me from a standpoint of the makeup of our departments and what we have at our disposal in terms of covering those teaching needs. It sounds like there's not much there, but there really is when you think about things like AP or dual enrollment, or situations where we may have teachers that are at our high school and our middle school, making sure that works is sometimes more difficult than it seems.
And I would add, Katie, if she were here for this, every student who has an IEP goes through a rating scale system and a rubric that her department developed this year to determine need on a priority level, and then that determines caseload that teachers oversee. And then, so maybe one teacher has 5 kids, but another teacher has 12, but it's based on the overall rating of the students and the intensity of specialized instruction or behavior intervention they need, which then allows us to determine for the first time in a long time, how many actual pupil service staff we need versus just staying flat year after year, and our numbers of IEPs might go up or down. So there's a more strategic approach to how we're staffing based on student need, not just this is how we've always done it.
So taking that thought, that's where I was gonna go next. So if we include Katie and Jake in these conversations early on with HR,
And
Yeah.
principals.
and, correct, where does Brittany come in her budgetary office?
So then, that's our weekly cabinet meetings where, that's our first standing item. I go, where are we at, guys? And Jake will pull the enrollment numbers to look at that. Mike will talk about resignations, retirements, and retention. Katie talks about what I just talked about with pupil service, and Brittany's informed then, so she can start to think about allocation of dollars and how we're going to make goals like adding school psychs and other areas a reality.
And that would be the other misnomer I think that's out there, is our staffing is based out of the budgetary office, and that's absolutely not correct. It starts in these three offices.
It's a weekly
And that-
discussion since
Thank you,
probably after the annual meeting,
thank you.
and it will be until the first day of school.
And probably the second.
Yep,
and-
until
and-
we are
and
fully
the-
staffed.
And the 100th day
And we
and,
are fully staffed, correct.
Yeah.
Is ongoing.
Again, it's the biggest heavy hitter when it comes to utilizing taxpayer money. And we spend the most time on it, not just because of the financial, but we want quality people
70-80% of the
behind.
budget?
85 is total staff, but I would say 80 is this
Of
teaching.
the
certified.
total budget.
Yeah.
So obviously Brittany's involved in it, but we're
Mhm.
driving it via this conversation. I think that's important for the community to know.
Yep.
Thank you. Sorry,
Yep.
thank you.
No, thanks for pointing that out. Like, that, those are what I was talking about. Mike had explained all that to me, and it's important that people understand that, so thanks for bringing that up. Any other discussions? All right, we have a motion and a second. I'll take all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That carries.
Any opposed?
Any opposed? Now that carries.
Thanks.
And we will move on to the B, spring contracts. And Mike, I'll ask of you, I reviewed all this and went through it. A lot of names on the list. Could you, I think the quickest way to do it, could you just highlight the names of new
Sure.
coaches as opposed to returning coaches?
Right, we had a conversation about this, and I asked Sarah to review it with that thought in mind. And we would like to, when we go to the board, include that in the document as
Good.
well. So there are 6 that are new. Mackenzie Kohler, girls head soccer coach. Jason Borchard, girls assistant soccer coach. Brody Josert, boys tennis coach. Lisa Stigler, boys assistant tennis coach. JD Optikar, co-ed assistant track coach. And then Greg Siegert, track coach at KMS. And that column that you see about teacher in the building and out, I've also asked Mr. Nerdle to modify that. As you see it right now, it really should mean in the district. What I've asked her to do is to identify the specific school that those teachers are at.
Good.
So it will say that, or we'll say, outside the district, from out of the district, that kind of thing. So we'll see that in 2 weeks.
Can we get, is it okay to have if they are outside of the school district, what school district they're from? Or is that?
They may not be from a school district.
Well, yeah, some
No,
are
I'm-
not from a school district,
Yeah.
but if they are, I'm just trying to think of a reason why not.
I think that would be okay.
Yeah, I think it'd be okay.
I'm not saying it has to,
Yeah.
it's interesting to see where those lines cross sometimes.
I think there's 3 on this list currently, 4 that are from other
Yeah.
districts.
Baseball, I know, is
Yep.
Bayview.
Okay. Any questions on the list? Any? No? Alright. Try it online. Okay, I'm ready to hear a motion if anybody has one on that.
Motion with a positive recommendation to the full board to approve the GHS and KMS spring coaching contracts as presented.
I'll second.
Have a first and a second. Any discussions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. And that brings us to item 8. I'll hear a motion for that.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Have a first, second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that closes the Personnel Committee meeting at 6:13.